Suddenly mysterious marks appeared, and humanity awakened unique powers, starting the era of hunters among them. Only 3 people reached the legendary mythic class, a power above any other. This global phenomenon spared no place, even reaching the city of Lindhai in the Dragon Kingdom. With the new powers came new threats. Monsters of all kinds appeared, and the fight for humanity's survival had only just begun. The difference in power was brutal. Even with the new abilities, many hunters were no match for the creatures, and defeat seemed inevitable for most. And at the top of the food chain were the 3 mythics, figures of unparalleled power, who became the hope and pillar of their nations. The first was Alfred, the Phantom Blade of the United States, a master swordsman whose skills were legendary. The second from Russia was Rasta, the Hell Dragon Knight, a warrior who dominated the skies riding his beast. And the third was Quanjixian, the Ice Mage King of the Frost Nation, a man whose elemental power could freeze hell itself. The power of these 3 was so overwhelming that their nations became the greatest powers in the world, leaving all other countries behind. But while the world was dominated by these 3, another legend was emerging in the Dragon Kingdom. His name was Asura, the greatest expert in the Dragon Kingdom, and a man destined to leave his own mark on history. He was not a mythic, but his strength was unquestionable. Asura single-handedly faced the most terrifying threats, protecting his people against enemies that seemed invincible. Each strike of his was decisive, a demonstration of power and skill that placed him at the top of the hunters. He seemed unstoppable, a true bulwark for his kingdom. However, the strongest wave of monsters the world had ever seen, the 9th rank, invaded Earth. And it was on this day that the legend of Asura faced its final test, and on that day the hero known as Asura, who had changed classes 8 times, gave his life to defend the world against the Rit. It was his final sacrifice. He fought with everything he had until his last breath, never backing down, legend forged in battle, whose name would echo for eternity. His death marked the end of an era. Figures from all over the kingdom gathered in silence to honor the fallen hero and the legacy he left behind. Time passed. 100 years later. The world still celebrated his sacrifice. The ceremony in memory of Asura gathered the greatest hunters of the kingdom to pay tribute. Meanwhile, the day's news brought an interesting statistic. The number of awakened had grown by more than 11, breaking all records since the other world emerged. The presenter explained that the number of elite hunters now far surpassed that of Asura's time, raising a possibility that everyone was hoping to hear. The hope was that with so many new talents, the world could finally witness the emergence of the next Asura, a new hero for a new era far from all this commotion. In a simple dark room, a young man watched it all without much interest. Until suddenly, a system notification appeared before his eyes. It announced that the gate to the other world was about to open and asked the hunter to prepare. The message caught him completely by surprise. It didn't make any sense. He sat up in bed, still trying to process what was happening, and then confusion gave way to a single, terrifying question. He wondered how this was possible, as he was sure he was already dead. Suddenly a stabbing headache hit him, bringing with it a flood of memories. Fragments of memory invaded his mind. The contempt, the sensation, was so overwhelming that he lost control for a moment. The memories of that contempt paralyzed his thoughts, leaving only the physical reaction of that moment. He finally understood. He was in the body of a young man with the same name as his 100 years in the future. And this boy's class was Monster Tamer, which explained everything. After all, everyone knew that to create a powerful monster tamer, you had to have the wealth of an entire nation. It was a class that depended on endless money and resources for an ordinary person. Awakening with this class was a sentence. The young Zhao Yue, the original owner of the body, couldn't handle the pressure and took his own life. He looked at himself in the mirror but didn't see his own reflection. He saw the face of a weak and scared boy, the complete opposite of the man he once was, the strongest of all. That vision was enough. He wasn't going to mourn the past anymore. With new clothes he looked at himself again. This time the reflection was his. The confident man. The supreme warrior he had revived once again. A touch on the mirror sealed the promise he was back. And this time nothing would stop him. With this new determination, he turned and invoked the power that was dormant. It was time to reconnect with the system. And the system responded. After more than 36,000 days offline, it finally recognized its master. The hunter, Asura. A powerful energy materialized in front of him. Right after the energy opened up, revealing a space portal, he didn't hesitate for even a second. And he took the first step towards his forgotten power. On the other side, a flood of notifications awaited him. They were the rewards accumulated for a century of absence. The numbers were simply absurd. The system congratulated him for being the first to defeat a 9th-tier monster wave, a feat that earned him a mythic-level treasure. It was the beginning of his new journey. Inside the mythic treasure, he found a supreme divine-level item. A reward that exceeded all the expectations he could have had, and then the system released his offline rewards. A skill power accumulated for 100 years, multiplied by 999 times. The numbers were so absurd that they barely fit on the screen. He couldn't hide his satisfaction. The reward for being the first to clear the world's most difficult monster wave was, in fact, ridiculously generous. But the main prize was yet to come. The system offered him a class reset, giving him the chance to choose one of the 7 mythic ranked core classes: warrior, mage, assassin. All the options were powerful, but he already had a plan in mind. A choice that most players would avoid at all costs. He thought about the monster tamer class. The biggest problem with this occupation was the astronomical amount of skill power needed to evolve both the player and their pets. But for him that wasn't a problem. With the skill power equivalent to 1 million years accumulated, the class's biggest flaw became its greatest advantage. The decision was made: he chose to become a necromancer. The advanced class of the monster tamer. A mythic ranked class with absurd growth potential. From the start. Unlike a common tamer whose pets had limited intellect, a necromancer commanded the dead, creating a loyal army from the souls of their enemies. The power flowed through him, sealing his new identity in the system. He reflected that, in this life, he was starting with a mythic class. An advantage that would completely change his destiny, and put him at the top with his new class set. He was transported to the first world of the other world, a place known as the Nightmare Spring. The system asked if he wanted to continue with his old identity, Asura. But he refused. His new name would be Zero. For him, Zero was the only concept that surpassed everything. And with this new beginning, he arrived at his starting point. Doomsday Village. As soon as they arrived, the other newbies were immediately puzzled by the calmness of the place. They expected a world infested with monsters, but there was nothing in sight. Zero, however, just watched, completely familiar with the environment. While the other hunters, in a panic, tried to form groups to survive, Zero went his own way. He had no interest in joining them. Soon the system window appeared, revealing to everyone the harsh reality of that world. The mission was clear: as the only survivor, it was necessary to break the cycle of the apocalypse and crush the approaching darkness. The missions were straightforward. Eliminate 1,000 monsters, and collect 10 silver coins. Only by fulfilling these objectives would it be possible to open the portal to the first world's boss and finally advance. For Zero, none of this was new. He recognized the layout of the place and immediately made his plan. Buy equipment before anything else. His experience was his greatest advantage, and he knew exactly where to go. Inside he found the owner of the equipment shop, a blacksmith named Chelsea, who greeted him. Zero confirmed his suspicion. The store was exactly as he remembered. It only sold basic and low-quality items, with the best equipment being only 1 star. But the blacksmith had a silver tongue. He offered Zero the possibility of buying higher-level equipment, as long as he was willing to pay a little more for it. Without hesitation, Zero put all his starting money on the counter. He didn't want a set of basic items. He wanted one thing: a 1-star magic staff. The blacksmith handed over the staff, wishing him luck. Zero's choice left the other newbies completely shocked, not understanding why he spent everything on a single item. The other hunter's logic was simple. Spending all the money on a single one-star weapon was stupid. The increase in power was minimal, and a complete set of basic items would offer much more chances of survival. But Zero didn't give a damn. He simply took his staff and went his way, completely ignoring the others' comments. However, one of the hunters raised an interesting possibility. She questioned whether the weapon's attack power could increase if it was refined. The idea was quickly dismissed. The materials to refine equipment were absurdly rare, with a very low drop rate. No one in their right mind would spend such valuable resources on a simple, one-star staff. As Zero walked away, the other hunters mocked him behind his back. To them the newbie was a complete ignoramus, who spent everything, and who would surely suffer the consequences later. But Zero didn't give a damn about the comments. For a normal hunter, the idea of spending everything on a one-star piece of equipment was crazy. The attack power was low, and the skill points to refine were too limited. But for Zero the story was different. He wasn't at all worried about the lack of resources. He then activated his skill, starting the refinement process on the staff, and the first refinement was a success. The system confirmed that the chance of increasing attributes was low, making the cost-benefit even worse for common hunters. But he had no intention of stopping there. The system asked if he wanted to continue, and the answer was obvious. Zero continued refining the staff repeatedly, without stopping for a single second. Until finally, after a long string of successes, he achieved his goal. The system announced that the equipment had been upgraded to the highest level. It took 132 refinements, spending almost 1,000 skill points to obtain the gold attribute. The novice staff was now a legendary weapon. Its attack power increased dramatically, and he even gained a new passive burn skill. With his new weapon in hand, Zero declared that the preparations were complete. He was finally ready to start the hunt. He then entered the first world, known as the Origin of Nightmares, a place that was the beginning of the end for most novice hunters. Inside, reality was brutal. Common hunters could barely scratch the giant monsters, with their attacks causing insignificant damage. To the creatures of that place, the attacks of the novices were nothing more than an annoyance. The difference in power was simply overwhelming. Meanwhile, the other hunters were in total panic. They couldn't understand the monstrosity they had just encountered. One of the warriors attempted a desperate attack, gathering all his strength to strike the creature. But out of nowhere, a fire spell exploded in front of them. The attack hit the monster head-on, causing massive damage and engulfing it in flame. The novices simply couldn't believe what they were seeing. The power of that blow was something they never dreamed of achieving, and then they saw who was responsible. Zero was standing there calmly, with the giant monster defeat at his feet. For him it was simple. With his attributes and equipment maxed out, what was a challenge for an entire group for Zero was solved with a single attack. The group of hunters watched from afar, completely speechless. The warrior noticed Zero's golden equipment and thought he might be a veteran. But he soon dismissed the idea, as it would be impossible to have so many points to refine a beginner's staff. At that moment, they understood that Zero was not a simple hunter. He was on a completely different level. Zero, however, was already thinking about the next step. He knew that level 1 monsters gave little experience, and that he needed stronger targets to really level up. He recalled the dangers of the first world, from the poisonous spiders to the armored scorpions, until reaching the final boss, the level 10 Berserk Boar King. The decision was made. His best option was to go to the abandoned factory and hunt monsters of level 3 or higher. Without hesitation, Zero turned and set off alone towards his new goal. Seeing their chance to survive, the other hunters ran after him, offering to form a team and asking him to carry them. Zero stopped and looked at the group following him. The proposal to form a team was in the air, but he didn't seem at all interested in babysitting newbies. The answer came without a single word. He simply turned his back and continued on his way, leaving the group behind left to their own devices. The hunters were paralyzed, realizing that Zero's aura was scarier than that of any monster. That guy was on another level. As Zero approached the abandoned factory, the group could only think about the madness he was about to commit. That place was a nest of dangerous monsters, and he was going in alone. And inside the reception was not friendly at all. The creatures were already waiting for their next victim. But Zero wasn't there to be anyone's victim. He began to annihilate the monsters one by one. With brutal efficiency, the massacre had begun. With each creature defeated, a level up notification appeared. In a matter of seconds he had already leveled up, gaining new attribute points. He didn't stop for a second, using his staff to disintegrate anything that dared to cross his path. Only the real challenge was yet to come. The protagonist found himself surrounded by an army of monstrous spiders. For anyone else it would be the end of the line. But for Zero it was just another opportunity. He prepared his first attack skill. After the cleanup, Zero checked his stats and was surprised. The rewards for mythic rank hunters were 6 times higher than normal. Gaining a few levels already earned him 18 attribute points. With so many points to distribute, he began optimizing his stats immediately, planning each investment. He focused on intelligence to increase his magic power, and the rest was distributed in agility and mental strength, creating a perfect balance for his fighting style. Next he opened his skill tree. His initial magic, the small fireball, had a hidden potential. It could be improved. A smile of satisfaction appeared on his face. Everything was going exactly as he had planned. The true power was just beginning to awaken. With the attribute points in hand, Zero wasted no time. His initial skill, Small Fireball, had potential, but it needed a serious upgrade. It was time to maximize its power. He invested point after point, and with each notification the skill became stronger. The damage increased dramatically, and new effects were added. The power he knew so well was finally returning. With his skills enhanced, he finally opened the main mission screen. The system's first challenge was about to begin. The rules were clear: survive the first world. To do this he would need to eliminate 1,000 monsters, and collect 10 silver coins. Only then would the gate to the next challenge open. But as he surveyed the environment, he realized something: he wasn't alone. And it didn't seem like just one monster was lurking nearby. His attention turned to a gigantic, ancient door that seemed completely out of place in the middle of the forest. Intrigued, he approached to investigate. Without hesitation he pushed open the gates. The priority was to complete the mission, and if the answer was inside, he would find it. Inside he found a wounded and desolate man. His name was Carl, and he appeared to be a survivor of that forgotten place. Zero understood immediately. Missions, dungeons, and this world worked exactly like a game. And this man was an important piece on the board. The survivor, in despair, recounted that his family had been killed by monsters and begged for Zero's help. A new mission appeared on the screen offering a choice. Zero analyzed the proposal with a slight smile. He knew that the rewards from NPC missions were far superior to common items. It was an opportunity he couldn't waste. The decision was made. He accepted Carl's mission. Now his target wasn't just any monster, but the specific creatures that haunted that place. And he knew his targets well. The armored scorpions, a memory from his past, surfaced. It had been a while since he faced them. They were mid-level monsters, known for their almost impenetrable physical defense. A challenge for any newbie, but for the Zero of now it was just another warm-up. Without wasting time, Zero went on the attack. He knew that the armored scorpion shell was tough, so he would need brute force from the start. But he needed to be quick. Zero remembered that if he eliminated too many normal scorpions, the armored scorpion king would appear much sooner than expected. To speed up the process, he used one of his strongest skills, the Ultra Fireball. The monster tried to retaliate with a charge, but it was too late. The impact was direct and devastating. The level 5 scorpion was annihilated. With the victory, Zero gained a few more experience points, continuing his climb to power. The problem was that this skill despite being powerful, consumed his mana very quickly. He couldn't afford to waste it carelessly. Without time to rest, Zero was already aiming at the next target. Only the inevitable happened. The alert in the system indicated that the area boss had been awakened. The armored Scorpion King emerged from the shadows, much larger and more imposing than the others. The real battle was about to begin. Zero launched a first attack to test the boss's defenses, but as he remembered, the king's shell was absurdly tough. The damage was almost null. The monster counterattacked with overwhelming force. Zero had to use all his agility to dodge the deadly blow. The impact of the claw shattered the ground where he was seconds before. A single mistake would be the end. If the armor was impenetrable from the outside, he would have to attack from the inside. Zero saw the perfect opening and aimed a direct attack at the monster's mouth. Zero's attack was accurate, exploding from the inside out. He believed he only needed to deliver the final blow to complete the mission. The Scorpion King fell to the ground with a dull thud. The gigantic creature seemed finally defeated. Zero approached feeling that luck was on his side. Even with his mana almost depleted, only the AFK'd Grissi was missing to end everything once and for all. But out of nowhere, another hunter emerged from the shadows, ready to steal the reward. The man shouted that he would be the one to kill the Scorpion King and complete the mission. The hunter ran past Zero, heading straight for the fallen monster, without noticing the trap. That's when he realized the mistake. Zero wasn't surprised, he was waiting for it. The man's face twisted in panic. He had fallen straight into the protagonist's plan. Zero knew there were hunters who didn't play fair, specializing in robbing and killing others for rewards. He was counting on their greed. He thought it was a shame they'd chosen the wrong target. After all, every enemy Zero faced in his previous life was thousands of times stronger than those worms. The hunter was in shock, not understanding how Zero could still use his skills. He shouldn't have any mana left. Zero then revealed his plan. If he hadn't pretended to be exhausted, the traitors would never have revealed themselves. The bait worked perfectly. The hunter finally understood the gravity of his mistake. This wasn't just any newbie. He was the prey that had just become the predator. But before dealing with the traitor, something emerged from the flames of the defeated Scorpion King. The creature's soul was still there, pulsing with power. And then a system notification appeared, offering Zero the chance to absorb the armored Scorpion King as his new pet, a rare opportunity. Zero didn't think twice. With a single command, he began to absorb the monster's essence, feeling the power flow into his hand. Immediately a dark shadow began to form at Zero's feet. The dark energy expanded across the floor, taking shape before everyone's eyes. The hunter, who previously thought he was clever, was now paralyzed with fear. He had no idea what was about to happen. From the shadows, the creature he had just defeated emerged. The armored Scorpion King was back, but now, as a loyal servant to Zero. And that's when the true strength of the Necromancer class was revealed. Unlike normal tamers who share their experience, Zero's pets could level up by consuming other monsters. An absurd shortcut to power. It seems the new pet and its master were already getting along very well. A somewhat unusual friendship. And the pet wasn't just loyal. It also got stronger. Its defense skill instantly evolved to a rank A, making it an almost impenetrable tank. The traitor could hardly believe what he was seeing. Defeating the boss was already impressive, but turning it into a super-powered servant in seconds, that was another level. With his new guardian by his side, Zero calmly explained the situation. He knew he was being followed since the beginning of the mission and that their plan was to ambush him at the end. Despair took over the hunter. Tears streamed down his face as a single idea ran through his head. He needed to run, and he needed to do it now. But it was too late. With a subtle smile, Zero turned to his new companion, ready to give the first order. The traitor didn't think twice and bolted. He ran with all the desperation he had left, trying to escape his fate. But the escape was cut short. Cornered by the Scorpion King, the man knelt and begged for his life. Zero, however, showed no mercy. He just reminded him of the law of the jungle. If you want to devour others, you have to be prepared to be devoured too. With the revenge complete, the other hunter thanked Zero. He promised that from that moment on, they would be great companions. With the situation resolved, Zero was finally able to check the rewards for the mission he had completed. In addition to experience and coins, he got a new piece of equipment, a pair of level 5 armor boots, which increased both his physical and magical defense. He also received a special notification, a golden attribute, equipment called Sacred Origin of Magic. With the two new pieces of equipment, Zero felt more prepared than ever for what lay ahead. And that's when the skies opened with an announcement for all the hunters in the area. A level 5 secret dungeon had appeared, and it would only be open for 1 hour. The first to complete it would receive a generous reward. The news caught everyone by surprise, causing a stir among the hunters. An opportunity like this was rare, but Zero didn't see it as a competition. With a confident smile, he already considered the reward his. It was within his reach after all. He had a secret weapon. The growth stats of his new pet were impressive, with a potential of 10 stars and physical strength. A true wall. However, a massive and intimidating portal opened in front of everyone. The energy emanating from it was so powerful that even the most experienced hunters hesitated to approach. The adventurers began to whisper among themselves. The reward was tempting, but the risk was very high. They feared that even if they got the money, they wouldn't get out alive to spend it. Amidst the general hesitation, Jiang Yu stepped forward, determined to enter the dungeon. The doubt of others was not his own, but before he could proceed, a hand landed on his shoulder, interrupting his path. An extravagant entrance caught everyone's attention. An imposing group had arrived, led by a man in gleaming golden armor. The hunters quickly recognized him. It was Liu Yao, the son of the richest man in Linhai City, a figure known for his power and arrogance. The crowd commented on the young master's ostentation. Even his subordinates used expensive equipment, something most couldn't even dream of having. As Liu Yao's group passed by, the woman beside him suddenly stopped, shocked to see who was there. Zhang Yu also recognized her instantly. It was Lin Yu, his ex-girlfriend. Her presence there brought back memories he'd rather forget. She approached with an air of superiority, questioning what a simple monster tamer, who could barely pay rent, was doing in a place like that. Without flinching, Zhang Yu stared back and coldly asked if his presence was some kind of problem. His response caught her off guard. She expected him to beg for another chance, as he always did, but the confidence in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Regaining her composure, Lin Yu clung to Liu Yao's arm and mocked Zhang Yu, saying that only elite people like her new partner had the right to be there. Liu Yao joined the conversation provocatively, asking if it hurt to be dumped, trying to humiliate Zhang Yu in front of everyone. But Zhang Yu remained indifferent. He replied that she was nothing more than an old pair of shoes, and if Liu Yao liked them so much, he could keep them. The public humiliation infuriated Lin Yu. She yelled at Zhang Yu, accusing him of talking nonsense, and asking Liu Yao to take care of him. Zhang Yu, however, showed no fear. With a grim smile, he gave a veiled warning, suggesting that they better enjoy the time they had left. Lin Yu tried to belittle him, insisting to Liu Yao that Zhang Yu was just pretending to be strong, and that she knew well how useless he really was. However, something bothered Liu Yao. Observing the young man, he realized that he couldn't see his level or class, as if they were being deliberately hidden. Despite the strangeness, Liu Yao decided to ignore the feeling. He turned to his followers and asked if everyone had brought their resurrection scrolls, inviting them to enter the dungeon with him. Confident, he activated the entrance, determined to be the first to conquer that place. An intense light enveloped the entire crew, transporting them to the challenge. Meanwhile, Hunter approached Zhang Yu, advising him to just admit defeat, as poor people like them couldn't compete with the rich. Zhang Yu reflected on this. The old owner of that body might have been a loser, but he who was now called Asura had nothing to do with that. The hunter interpreted Zhang Yu's attitude as pure arrogance. thinking he was just good at bluffing to hide his weakness. Around them, other hunters commented on Liu Yao's group. They called him a daddy boy, impressed that they all had resurrection scrolls, but inside the dungeon a real danger awaited them. Jiang Yu knew that victory wouldn't be easy. He could only guarantee success if he and his armored scorpion reached level 5 and were fully equipped. While Liu Yao's group advanced arrogantly, Jiang Yu watched from afar. The real battle was just beginning. Meanwhile outside, Liu Yao and his companion used the resurrection scroll to escape the dungeon. They abandoned the fight and left safely, leaving the danger behind. Lily Yao, however, was inconsolable. She complained to her brother about the humiliation they suffered, furious that they had been forced to retreat in that way. But Liu Yao remained calm. He explained that acting there, with so many witnesses, would be a mistake. The losses from an open confrontation would be greater than the gains. He reassured her, promising that Jiang Yu would pay for what he did. Sooner or later Lily Yao seemed to calm down, thanking him and trusting his promise. Back in the dungeon, Jiang Yu's hunt continued at full speed. With a single powerful blow, he not only eliminated another monster, but also achieved his main goal. The system confirmed both he and his pet had reached level 5. The sensation of the new power ran through his body. Now he finally felt prepared for what was to come. Other hunters who previously despised him watched the scene in shock. They couldn't believe that the one they called a loser had just defeated a level 5 scorpion with a single blow. The sudden display of power attracted a different kind of attention. Several huntresses approached, offering friendship and even a relationship in exchange for his protection. But Jiang Yu didn't have time for that. He simply ignored them and went on his way, leaving the girls completely speechless. Suddenly, a system announcement echoed throughout the area. The level 5 dungeon would close in just 10 minutes. Time was running out for everyone. For Jiang Yu, however, 10 minutes was more than enough. A confident smile appeared on his face. He reviewed the stats of his armored scorpion. With the passive skill Iron Body, his pet would be the perfect shield to withstand attacks on the front line. The plan was simple. The scorpion would act as a tank, while he focused on damage. To ensure success, Jiang Yu activated a special item to further strengthen his companion's defense. With the strategy set and time running out, Jiang Yu didn't hesitate. He walked towards the portal, ready for the real challenge that awaited him. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the dungeon, the battle had already begun. A devastating explosion ripped through the scene, showing that the situation there was quite different. The guild president Ya seemed to be enjoying the danger. However, his companion was terrified, warning that facing a level 7 enemy was suicide. For the other survivors, the only thing that mattered was getting out of there alive. One of them suggested taking the chance to escape while the monster was distracted. But suddenly something caught Yao's attention. At the top of a cliff, a solitary silhouette watched everything from above. The unexpected arrival put everyone on alert, and to their surprise, it was the rookie they had underestimated and left behind. Yao's expression changed from surprise to pure rage. The presence of that young man was an insult to him. The protagonist, however, didn't seem intimidated at all. On the contrary, he wore a smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. One of the guild members tried to calm Yao down, saying that it wasn't worth worrying about a resourceless rookie who was only there to die anyway. But the protagonist wasn't there for them. In fact, he thought it would be better if the group died soon, saving him the trouble of dealing with them later. He was relieved to finally get rid of that noisy bunch, as his real goal was something else. And then the ground shook violently. Something gigantic began to emerge from the earth, exactly as he expected. The true boss of the area had finally arrived. That was the monster he had been waiting for all along. A colossal armored scorpion emerged, its red eyes fixed on the intruder. The pressure that the creature emanated was simply overwhelming without showing fear. The young man summoned his own power. A dark aura took shape beside him, and with a single command, he ordered the attack. Zero servant's attack hit the monster, but the damage was insignificant. The Scorpion King's shell was too tough. The creature possessed an inherent ability that, combined with its equipment, made it a fortress not even a level 7 boss monster would be a match for its defense. Seeing that his servant was useless, Zero changed tactics, and launched an ultra fireball himself. The spell hit directly, causing critical damage and continuous burns. Even so, the blow was not enough to shake the creature. The Scorpion King withstood the explosion, now with its fury fully focused on the hunter. Zero knew he couldn't win from a distance. He ran towards the danger, using the monster's own claw as a ramp to get closer. As he climbed, he prepared his next attack, concentrating his power into multiple fire spheres. It was the perfect chance to hit the weak spot he had identified. With a sextuple shot, he aimed directly at the beast's face. A concentrated barrage on the only vulnerability the monster possessed. The attack worked. The impenetrable armor finally gave way, and for the first time the creature roared in pain. Wounded and enraged, the Scorpion King began to thrash violently, trying to crush the hunter. Zero jumped back, escaping the desperate attack. The damage to the monster's head was visible. The creature was disoriented, but still far from defeated. But the opening was all Zero needed. With a final and precise blow, he brought down the colossal beast. The battle was over. Standing over the body of the defeated boss, Zero watched it. He couldn't help but think that the creature was weaker than he expected. Outside, a system notification appeared for everyone. The level 5 dungeon had been cleared. The crowd was in shock. No one could believe it. A dungeon of that difficulty, completed by a single person. Most hunters were still stuck between levels 1 and 3. The name Zero began to spread among the hunters. Everyone wondered who that mysterious player was, capable of defeating a level 7 boss alone. As the news spread, other powerful groups also received the report. One of the huntresses tried to argue that it was impossible for someone to have defeated the level 7 monster alone, but the leader seemed to have his own suspicions. She insisted that it was ridiculous, that the mysterious player didn't even have a pet, and still hid his identity. For her, it was obvious that someone else was behind it. The leader agreed with her, not because he thought it was impossible, but because whoever had accomplished such a feat was undoubtedly someone extraordinary. And he wanted that person in his guild. He then gave a clear order to all his subordinates: find the player with the ID 0 immediately, and recruit him to the Supreme Guild at any cost. Far away, unaware that he was already being hunted, Zero analyzed the rewards of his victory. The boss's drop was much better than that of normal monsters, but one item in particular stood out: a dungeon scroll. He knew that a dungeon scroll that could be upgraded was something extremely rare and valuable, much more than any equipment or currency he could get on the market. Without thinking twice, Zero invested 2,000 skill points and upgraded the scroll, raising it from bronze to silver grade. The result was a challenger rank item, something that had never appeared in the first world before. If he decided to sell it, he could get hundreds of thousands. A fortune for any normal hunter. But money wasn't his goal. For Zero, the only thing that mattered was clearing the other world. And this scroll was the key to his next step. He activated the level 5 scroll, and a new system notification popped up. He had received a reward quest: rescue the survivor. Zero began to read the details of the quest, which was already proving to be extremely difficult. The quest had a difficulty rating of 100, and a clear objective: find a survivor named Elin and take her safely to a village. He only had 12 hours to complete the task. The problem was that the quest would take him to a level 10 map, but he was still at level 5. The difference in power would be a major obstacle. To make matters worse, the monsters in the area, such as the frenzied wild boar, were level 10 and often attacked in groups, making the task even more dangerous. Zero decided to put his worries aside. The priority now was to find the girl from the quest, Elin. And it wasn't long before he found her. The young woman was in trouble, desperately fleeing from a frenzied boar. But before the creature could reach her, a burst of fire hit it head-on, interrupting the attack. Zero appeared at the last second, saving the girl. Surprised, Aileen asked if he was there to rescue her, and the hunter simply confirmed. The rescue had been a success, but the clock was ticking. There were only 10 hours left to complete the quest and get out of that dangerous forest. Only the danger was far from over. Zero realized that something was wrong. He wondered if the quest itself was making the first boars so agitated and aggressive. And right after that, another boar charged towards them. Without hesitation, Zero protected the girl and counter-attacked with a fireball. The attack was accurate, causing immediate damage and setting the creature on fire. But the problem was much bigger than he imagined. It wasn't just one monster, but a whole horde of furious boars that surrounded them on all sides. Zero broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that if he let Alien be killed there, the entire mission would be a failure. The pressure was immense with no other choice. He summoned his most powerful creature. The hunter ordered the armored scorpion to protect them from the horde. The summon went into action, immediately intercepting the boar's advance and creating a defensive barrier for Zero and Eileen. With the scorpion guaranteeing their defense, Zero had the opening he needed to prepare a large-scale attack, his Ultra Fireball. The Ultra Fireball swept through the horde, hitting multiple boars at once and clearing a path through the chaos. Zero encouraged his scorpion, saying that the plan was working. With a few more kills, they would finally be able to level up, and the system notifications confirmed the success. Experience and skill points began to rain down, rewarding the pair's effort. But the joy was short-lived. Zero realized that the boars weren't stopping, and his mana to continue defending was almost gone. Still, he looked at the girl with a confident smile. Zero promised that no matter what happened, he would take her back safely. Only an even bigger and fiercer boar managed to break through the scorpion's defense, advancing directly towards Aileen. With no time to think, Zero spent the rest of his strength on another massive explosion to intercept the creature before it was too late. It became clear that this was no ordinary monster. It was the leader of the horde, a threat of a completely different level. The situation was critical. Zero realized that even his powerful armored scorpion wouldn't be able to hold out for much longer. Even with the defense failing, every kill counted. Each monster defeated was one step closer to survival. And then, in the moment of greatest despair, the tide turned. Zero finally got the necessary experience and leveled up not just once, but twice at once. With the level up, his attributes were restored and strengthened. He immediately invested the new points in his attack power, preparing for the counter-attack. He also remembered a piece of equipment he had obtained before, in the fight against the scorpions. A ring that could make all the difference. The glorious boss battle ring increased his power and, more importantly, gave his attacks the ability to ignore part of the enemy's defense. With his powers renewed and new equipment, Zero prepared himself. It was time to show the horde who was really in charge. With his newly acquired power, Zero unleashed a devastating attack. The horde of boars was annihilated in a single explosion, earning him an absurd amount of skill points. The result was immediate. He realized that his strength had jumped to a completely different level. The power that before barely worked on one enemy was now enough to decimate dozens. He advanced amidst the destruction, leaving behind the traces of his overwhelming victory. But the tranquility was short-lived. A figure emerged from the shadows, surprised to find Zero still alive. It was clear that his return from the dungeon was not expected by everyone, and he wasn't alone beside him. A woman accompanied him with the same air of superiority. They were the same ones who had betrayed him and left him to die. Zero stared at them, showing no fear. He knew exactly who they were, and what they wanted. The night was not over yet. The woman then asked the warrior Angie Yao to teach Zero a lesson, stating that last time he only managed to escape by sheer luck. The provocation didn't shake the young man. On the contrary, he challenged them directly, asking if they really wanted to try their luck again. The answer came in the form of a blade. Without hesitating, Yao unsheathed his weapon and lunged at Zero, determined to finish the job. The blow was quick and accurate, aiming for a vital point, an attack that for them should have been the end of everything. Only to Yao's astonishment, the attack had no effect whatsoever. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. The woman was also in shock. She didn't understand how Yao, an elite warrior, couldn't even scratch a simple unarmed beast, Tamir. And then Zero smiled. They underestimated him, basing it on the man he was before. A mistake that would cost them dearly. Yao's powerful attack was like a boar, crashing head-on into an unshakable rock. Completely useless, and without any effect. Zero's counterattack was instantaneous, and devastating. In a panic, Liu Yao tried to appeal to his status as guild president, and heir to the richest family, as if that could save him from the inevitable. But none of that mattered. In a single instant, all his power and prestige were reduced to nothing before Zero's overwhelming strength. His armor, which represented all his strength and status, was completely disintegrated, leaving behind only the wreckage of his arrogance. Zero then looked at the system notification. Everything went as planned. By attacking first, Liu Yao marked himself as the aggressor, allowing Zero to eliminate him without any penalty. An amateur mistake. The Otherworld system had very clear rules for attacks between hunters normally. A player's name was white, indicating a neutral status. But if someone initiated a surprise attack, their name would turn gray for a brief period. During this time, any retaliation from the victim was considered self-defense. If the victim was defeated in the process, the aggressor's name would turn red, permanently marking them as a murderer. And this mark had severe consequences. The player couldn't log out and became a target for monsters until they managed to clear their reputation. On top of everything, death meant losing levels, experience, and all your items. Liu Yao didn't just lose his life, he lost everything he had conquered. Yao's companion was paralyzed with fear. She couldn't understand how Zero, whom they despised so much, had become powerful enough to defeat an elite hunter with a single blow. Panic took over her. The woman thought about using her resurrection scroll to escape, but she knew the item had a usage limit and didn't want to waste it. Seeing that she had nowhere to run, she tried a different approach, hoping to appeal to Zero in some way. But Zero, and the young woman beside him, simply walked past her, ignoring her completely. To him, she didn't even deserve his attention. Zero had a clear reason for this. The woman Lin Yuer didn't attack him. If he assaulted her while her name was white, it could compromise his current mission. For Lin Yuer, being ignored was a humiliation worse than death. Anger took the place of fear, and she swore revenge against the man who dared to despise her. After resolving this situation with Lin Yuer, Zero took Ailin to a safe place near her village. The most dangerous part of the journey had finally come to an end. With a respectful bow, Ailin thanked Zero for everything. She said goodbye, saying that she could now go home alone. With the mission completed, the system rewarded Zero immediately. He leveled up to level 8, and among the prizes received a normal grape head egg. But the rewards didn't stop there. He also obtained a new ice magic staff, a 2-star weapon that would greatly increase his attack power. A more than welcome upgrade. Zero analyzed his new gains, satisfied with the progress. Each item and each attribute point made him stronger for the challenges ahead. The staff was powerful, but before thinking about using it, he turned his attention to another item he had received. He looked at the pet egg he won. Being only of normal grade, Zero already knew exactly what the fate of that egg would be. It wouldn't be a new battle companion. In fact, he had collected several eggs like that while farming monsters. They would all have the same purpose: to serve as food to strengthen his main pet. And the great beneficiary was his armored scorpion, who received the feast with contagious enthusiasm. It was time to evolve. The system confirmed the process. With each egg consumed, the scorpion's evolution value increased, preparing it to become an even more formidable creature. The result was a silver armored scorpion, with new passive abilities, including one that reflected part of the damage received back to the attacker. A true walking fortress. With a new staff, and his strengthened scorpion, Zero felt confident he finally had enough power to challenge the final boss of the first world. After getting stronger in the game, Zero was abruptly pulled back to reality. a place with much more pressing problems. He returned to his small dark apartment, where the fantasy of power gave way to the hardships of real life. The city outside seemed indifferent, but a solitary light in his building indicated that the problems of the real world awaited him. Only this time something was different. The power he gained in the other world didn't stay behind, it came with him. He barely had time to process what happened, and his cell phone started ringing. It was a call he couldn't ignore. On the other end of the line, the hospital gave him an ultimatum. Either he paid the $390,000 debt for his brother's medical expenses, or the treatment would be stopped. But Zero already had a plan. He would sell some gold equipment from the game to raise the money. It would be a way to repay the former owner of this body by saving his brother. However, the system had other plans. A red warning popped up informing him that all of his equipment was bound to his soul and could not be sold. And then it hit him. This was the big downside of his 10,000 times increased, buff incredible power. But it prevented him from profiting from the items. With his main plan ruined, the pressure of the debt and the urgency of the situation returned in full force. If he couldn't sell items, he would need money some other way. Desperate, he started looking for quests and jobs in the game forums. And in the midst of common requests, something caught his attention, an extremely risky opportunity, but with a reward that would solve everything. Sitting on the bed, he pondered the decision. It was a dangerous bet, but he didn't have many options. Jianjiu's brother's life was at stake. With a confident smile, he made up his mind. He would accept the mission known as Deadly Bounty, a job that no one else dared to take. For this mission he would need to prepare carefully. Even a simple, magic ice staff could be the key to success. On the other end of the line, the mysterious contractor coordinated the operation. She was the one behind the risky mission that the young man had just accepted. Meanwhile, Zero finalized the details of the agreement over the phone. He needed to understand all the conditions before risking his life for that money. The woman then explained the main objective. He would need to help a specific person get through the first phase of the game, serving as a protector. With a confident smile, Zero made his counter-offer. He didn't want 300,000, he needed 390,000. The exact amount of the hospital debt. The deal was closed. The client informed him that the person he was supposed to help would meet him at the rebirth point of the starting village. Without wasting time, Zero entered the game. He materialized in the middle of the village square, ready to start the mission that could save his brother. To him the deal seemed perfect. Earning almost 400,000, just to carry someone through a phase that he was going to complete anyway. But then he spotted the person he was supposed to help. And his initial confidence was shaken by a completely unexpected surprise. Before him stood a fully hooded figure, hiding their face and any trace of their identity. This was his client. The mysterious figure simply nodded, confirming that she was the person he was looking for. Her silence was a little intimidating. Around them, other players began to whisper. They recognized the hooded figure as the calamitous mage, and mocked Zero for accepting such a dangerous task. The mage, however, didn't seem to care about the comments. She remained silent, adjusting her hood and maintaining her air of mystery. The mage's reputation, and the scornful looks from the other players, began to weigh on Zero. He realized that he might have underestimated the danger of this mission. It was then that the mage took the initiative. She sent a group invite stating that she would help him complete the world's quests. First, she then explained the prerequisites for clearing that world. Kill 1,000 monsters and collect 10 coins. The mage knew exactly what needed to be done. Zero accepted the invitation but already set a condition. He warned that it was no use if they couldn't finish off the monsters efficiently. Then he revealed his own plan. He would help her level up while completing the quests. To prove his point, Zero summoned a power that the mage didn't expect. With a single spell he completely froze a scorpion monster. The creature was trapped in ice crystals, completely immobilized. Zero explained that, although the spell's damage wasn't that high, it was perfect for crowd control, paralyzing enemies so they could be safely taken down. The mage was completely speechless. She didn't expect a player of such a low level to have such a powerful and effective control ability. Seeing the immobilized monster, she wasted no time. The mage prepared her own attack, channeling her dark energy to finish the job. Her attack hit the frozen monster head-on, resulting in an explosion of power that shattered the creature instantly. The experience was so much that the mage leveled up several times at once. She could hardly believe the efficiency of Zero's method. But there was no time to celebrate. Soon after, an even bigger monster appeared, and the mage found herself face to face with the new threat. The creature attacked without warning. In the blink of an eye, Zero threw himself in front of the mage, pushing her away from the fatal blow. Even on the ground, Zero didn't hesitate. He shielded the mage with his body and conjured a gigantic fireball to repel the monster. The mage watched, shocked by Zero's courage and power. He definitely wasn't an ordinary player, and she was beginning to understand that. At that moment, the way she saw him completely changed. The infamous calamitous age saw in him something she couldn't find in others: a true partner. After the battle, she simply agreed to follow his plan. The sudden change in attitude left Zero a little confused. Later, as they advanced through the forest, the mage tried to warn him. She called herself a calamity, stating that she would only bring him trouble if they stayed together. The mage insisted that he should walk away. She saw herself as a calamity, a source of bad luck, and warned that she would only bring trouble to anyone who stayed close. The burden she carried was a gigantic shadow, a curse that threatened to consume anyone who got too close. She then began to take off her hood, determined to show her sincerity. With her face revealed, the young woman offered 10,000 as compensation. It was a payment for Zero to simply leave, and leave her alone with her destiny. Zero's reaction, however, broke all the tension. He just commented that for all this time, he thought she was mute. The mage was speechless. She tried to explain again, reminding him of what people said about her being the personification of disaster, a true battleman. But Zero seemed more curious than worried. He asked what, after all, it meant to be a personification of calamity. His complete lack of fear completely shocked her. No one had ever reacted that way before, and then the answer to his question appeared, in the form of a group of hunters. The truth was that in the forums, anyone who accepted her quest ended up dead. Without wasting time, the leader of the group shouted orders to his men, declaring that they would do justice, and ordering everyone to attack. In a panic, the mage begged Zero to run away. They were targeting her, and he didn't need to get involved in this. But Zero didn't move. On the contrary, he stood in front of her, releasing his aura. No one was going to touch his quest reward. Suddenly, a new voice emerged, excited about the prospect of a team fight. The situation was about to get more complicated. And it did. A second group, much more equipped and organized, emerged from the shadows. Their aura was visibly more powerful. The first group of hunters tried to explain themselves to the newcomers, but were immediately silenced. It became clear that the new players on the field were on a completely different level. The leader of the new group recognized Zero, commenting sarcastically that it seemed like fate that they met. He then teased, asking if Zero was there to give him more free equipment, like last time. But Zero wasn't intimidated in the slightest. With a confident smile, he reminded the enemy of a crucial detail. The man could no longer use resurrection scrolls for the next 7 days. Zero's taunt hit home. The leader recoiled his hand, visibly annoyed at having his weak spot exposed in that way. Without further argument, he lost his patience and gave the final order to his men. Surrounded and at a disadvantage, the success of the mission and the life of his brother depended on what would happen next.